let's start with Texas and Michigan. That game wasn't even a contest. At no point was Michigan ever really in that game. It felt like from the very jump, Michigan was playing from behind. What did you see from Texas? And, what's your takeaway for both the Longhorns and for the Wolverines?
Yeah, I mean, as the guy that was driving the Michigan can cover, Michigan can maybe even win this game train on the preview show, I came away very impressed with the Texas Longhorns. And that was just an utter domination from start to finish. From the word go, you could tell that Texas was the better team. I mean, there was time and time again, starting from the opening series, you see Michigan just couldn't get off the field on third down. Texas always seemed to have the play to get the third down conversion when they needed it. Michigan was losing guys in coverage, which is extremely uncharacteristic of that defense. And just hats off to Coach Sark in that scheme for getting the guys open. Hats off to Quinn Ewers for playing, I thought, the best game of his entire career at Texas. He stayed clean. He didn't make any big mistakes. He didn't change the game with a missed throw or an interception. So hats off to that entire offensive unit, but really hats off to Quinn Ewers and hats off to that offensive line for just absolutely beating Michigan into submission by halftime. The game was over at halftime. We didn't even put it in our quad box in the second half. We were literally just checking the score because Michigan could do nothing and Texas was doing whatever they wanted. The fumble right before halftime was absolutely inexcusable, but it was just a microcosm of the day for Michigan. And any hope that they had went away after that. So we just didn't even feel the need to turn it on for the second half.
Yeah, I got booted pretty quickly. That was a unanimous decision to clean that from the quad box. Garrett, there's now clearly a quarterback controversy up in Michigan. They've been going back and forth between Davis Warren and Alex Orji. It was Warren's team. He was the starter. He's the primary quarterback. He's not very good. That's abundantly clear. There's no rhythm with this offense. The offensive line got bullied by a Texas defensive line that I quite honestly had a lot of questions about. And a lot of people had questions about the interior of the Texas defensive line. They held up well against a running team, a Michigan team that last year just bludgeoned opponents into submission, right? Whatever they wanted on the ground, eventually they got. They wore down Alabama. They wore down Washington in the playoff. This year, different team. A lot of starters gone to the NFL, obviously. But it's clear that there's a little bit of an identity crisis at Michigan offensively, and to the point where the defense couldn't make up any sort of ground for them. Talk to me about what you saw from the Wolverines and how concerned are you, given the rest of their schedule, that Michigan's going to have to figure some things out and figure them out quickly.
It's definitely not panic time for Michigan, because I think what we saw was Texas just being one of the better teams in college football, right? That end of the day, Texas proved a lot. They certainly weren't necessarily explosive or just massively successful in everything they wanted to do. It wasn't like they were playing Colorado State just throwing against the air, right? Like, they had to go against a good defense, and they still put up 31 and scored pretty effectively, were pretty efficient with the football. They obviously couldn't move at will as easily as maybe they would against lesser defenses, but that's still a really good Michigan defense that they did that to. Problem is, obviously, Michigan's defense was out there a little bit too much because, Michigan can't move the ball. And, going into the year, I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that, Michigan's a running-based team, so they're going to be able to do a lot of the same things that they've done in the past. But, for all that we maybe gave him crap for, McCarthy knew how to steer the ship. And they just don't have a guy who knows how to run whatever this offense is. Maybe you could blame it on Harbaugh being out and some of the magic's gone. I don't know what the situation is exactly. You probably have to go in and ask a lot of people much closer to the program than us. But man, there is a problem at Michigan with the offense. They don't have a quarterback, in my estimation. There's a reason they're not throwing Alex Orji out there that consistently, and it's because he's no better throwing the football. He really doesn't have that talent in the arm. I know a lot of people were hoping that maybe he could progress similar to Milroe. The problem is Milroe has arm talent. He just had to figure out how to play college ball. I'm not sure Orji has that kind of talent. And maybe he'll prove us all wrong. Maybe someday, we'll look back and say that this is one of the coldest possible takes, right? Like, Alex Orji could develop into a really good quarterback, but I don't think he can at Michigan, because we haven't really seen Michigan develop high-level quarterbacks in a while. It seems like, for a long time, Michigan's kind of just put out average run-of-the-mill quarterbacks who can, kind of get to their ceiling as like a bus driver or a ceiling of like an effective, can kind of make the offense work type of thing. But we really haven't seen a quarterback just explode at Michigan in a while. And I'm starting to get a little bit nervous that maybe it's just Michigan not understanding quarterback development. Maybe it's Michigan not knowing how to recruit quarterbacks. We certainly could talk about Michigan's recruiting issues if you want to get into that. But I just think at the end of the day, man, like Michigan has some issues on offense that maybe long-term you can come up with solutions to. Short-term, I don't know if you got the guys on your roster. And that's going to get real concerning once you get into the meat of the schedule, because Texas is not the only good team on their schedule, right? There's a lot of good teams on this schedule that will definitely push them. And I think if Michigan can play that ground control, they'll be okay. But if they can't establish the run like they weren't able to today, and they really weren't able to really hold the ball and kind of just bully people, they weren't able to do that. If they can't do that against Ohio State, if they can't do that against any of the other teams on the Big Ten schedule, it's going to be kind of an ugly year, I think, for Michigan. I think we expected a step back, but this is a big step back for Michigan, in my opinion.
Well, it was interesting because Michigan even looks slow. I thought their defense looked slow compared to the speed of Texas, right? I mean, we talked about that on the preview show. Texas feels like they've got 2 4x100 relay teams out wide. They were able to run the ball a little bit, certainly in the second half against this Michigan defensive front. Now, I think the Wolverines had maybe quit a little bit in that second half. It was over. It was over in the first 2 quarters. Texas was locked in. Credit the Longhorns for coming out and punching Michigan in the mouth. That is a hostile environment, so much so that a lot of people on their previews were saying, you know what, the Big House is worth maybe an entire score. And that's why they figured that that Michigan was going to cover. Trey, you had talked about the Big House plus that defense really playing into your prediction for that game. And, it didn't matter for Texas. They came out and they eliminated those variables really, really quickly. You mentioned Quinn played a very clean game. So, yeah, exciting times ahead, I think, for the Longhorns. It's hard not to project them as a national championship favorite after such a dramatic win. I did see one Texas beat writer tweet out that, enjoy this win while Michigan is ranked 10th in the country. Excuse me.
God bless you.
Live show. They're not going to finish the season there, right? This is going to be a team that has multiple other losses on that record. But no doubt, big Longhorns.
To your point, like you're talking about, hey, like it might be worth a full score at home. Like that's kind of what concerns me. Is I think you might be right that Ann Arbor is a huge advantage, and they still put up 12. Like
I think they still might have gotten that one score. Honestly,
they might have still gotten the one score. Like that's or maybe
Austin,
taking a score off. Yeah, like and I look at these other games that
Texas would have scored a lot more than 31.
Oh yeah, no, I think they hit 40 minimum if they were in Austin. But like I start to look at this and I say, okay, like looking at Michigan's schedule, there's definitely some reasons to be concerned. If you're looking at it, you got USC coming up in a couple of weeks. That's going to be a lot harder than you thought it was, because USC, they look pretty formidable. And so I don't know if this is a massive concern for them. I don't think that USC is like a world beater like Texas, but they're definitely going to put up points. Mm-hmm. They do get that game in Ann Arbor, but like you got to turn around and win that game real quick. You do play at Washington. Don't know really what we think of them right now. But they do play Oregon at home and then go on the road to Ohio State at the end of the season. So like those are some of the big matchups on their schedule. Not necessarily a bunch of world beaters on here, but there's a couple really, really good teams left on the schedule that if Michigan's not careful, they could end up, possibly unranked, maybe in like the 8-4 territory if they're not careful. And I understand, like, you won your championship. Congratulations. Like, fly the flag, banners hang forever. That's great. But this is not where Michigan fans want to be the year after winning their championship.
It's hard to repeat, man. It's hard to win one. It's even harder to repeat. I don't know that any of us really figured Michigan would repeat this year, but boy, no. It does feel like the program has taken a significant step back this year. We'll see if Sharon Moore is the fall guy. He's reportedly coaching without a signed contract. A lot of drama up in Ann Arbor right now, which is not good for the Wolverines.
Gracious him. How about